Hey everybody, it's Robyn and welcome to my channel where today I'm going to be showing you guys how to make a number cake. And yes, that's right, as you guys can see, we're going to be making the number 3. This one's going to be really simple and fun, and you can use this technique to make whichever number you want. So let's get right into it. So today we're using a 9 by 13 inch vanilla cake slab, which happens to be approximately 2 inches tall, excluding the dome, which we are going to trim off so that way our cake sits nice and level on our cake board. And I'm also going to tort our slab into 2 separate layers so that way we can add lots of yummy buttercream in between. So once our layer has been leveled and torted, we are going to take that first layer of cake and attach it to our cake board using a little bit of buttercream to act as a glue, so that way our cake doesn't slide around when you're cutting out whichever number it is you choose to do. And be sure to pick a font that is nice and thick and chunky, so that way you have lots of cake to work with as well. And I know I'm going to get a few comments, so I want you guys to know I am aware there is some tunneling in my cake from over mixing, but it could have been a lot worse, and it happens to the best of us. So don't sweat it, just learn from your mistakes and try to do better. So once I finish cutting out my first number, I'm going to reuse my template to cut out my second layer of cake. Now you guys can cut both layers at the same time if you wish, but I like to do it one at a time so that way I get a nice clean cut and everything matches up nicely. And now once we've finished with our cutting, it's time to add a nice thick layer of frosting to go in between each of our cake layers. So I've taken a piping bag and I filled it with some vanilla American buttercream, and you guys can find the link to that recipe down in the description box below. And once I finished filling it all in, I'm going to smooth it out ever so slightly using an offset spatula to make sure we don't end up with any air bubbles in between our cake layers. And now we're going to take that final layer of cake, line it up, and give it a little press down to secure it in place. And then I'm going to take my piping bag with some more of that vanilla American buttercream, and we're going to add another generous coat on top of our number 3. And now I'm going to take a small offset spatula and we're going to smooth this out and get our buttercream nice and even before grabbing our piping bag and starting to cover up those sides. So for this next part, I found the easiest thing to do was to take my piping bag and work in sections, piping long horizontal rows, starting at the bottom, working my way up to the top lip until I reached all the way around the outside of the cake and finally got into those little center sections. So I did begin filling these in by piping horizontally, but I found it a little bit difficult to reach, so I switched to vertical lines and found that quite a bit easier. But I wanted to smooth it out a little bit before that buttercream started to set, so I used a small offset spatula to get in that tiny little space before finally finishing off filling in the rest of the cake. So now that we have our cake covered in a nice thick layer of frosting, it's time to start smoothing the outside of our cake. And for this part, I like to use what's called a flexible smoother. So you should be able to find something like these at your local cake store or craft store, or even on Amazon if it's something that you want to buy. But for those of you who have watched my channel before, you'll know that I like to make mine. They are super simple to make, and all you do is get those cheap flexible cutting boards and a craft knife, and you can cut them to whatever size and shape you like, making these a great little money saving tip, and they work especially well on oddly shaped cakes. So these number cakes are definitely where you need to give these a try. Because with all the different angles and edges and curves, smoothing these cakes can be quite time consuming and tedious. So anything that makes the job quicker and easier in my books is all right. So now once our cake is completely smooth and we're happy with how it looks, we're going to pop it into the fridge to let it firm up for a little bit in preparation for some hand-piped decorations. So while our cake is in the fridge to chill, we're going to mix up some pretty colors to pipe on our cake with. So I want to do a couple of different shades of pink as well as a couple of different shades of purple. So for my pink, I'm using Wilton's Rose, and this stuff is actually super concentrated. So when making your light pink, make sure you just use a tiny touch. It is so pigmented and so bright, so you really don't need much. And then for the purple, we're going to use my favorite shade. This is AmeriColor Regal Purple, and it is so beautiful. I just love it, but it's not quite as concentrated. For the light purple, I just used 1 drop, but I had to use quite a bit more to get that nice deep dark shade. And then to finish prepping these colors for piping, I grabbed a few of my favorite piping tips and prepared them in some piping bags. So now we can get to decorating. So the first color we're going to use is some light pink, and I have a 1M piping tip. We're just going to pipe some very simple, pretty rosettes. And we don't need very many, we just need a few, and I don't really like that one at the top. It was kind of small, so I'm going to pipe a bigger one, and that should do. And now we're going to switch to some light purple and an Atco number 104 petal piping tip, or also a ribbon piping tip, as you guys can see. We're just going to pipe a few of those here, there, and everywhere, and to break up the color, I think those are going to work nicely. So the next color we're going to use is going to be some hot pink, and this has an Atco number 32 piping tip, which happens to be a large star shape, and this has all kinds of points on it, so you get that nice little cluster of points when you give it a little squeeze. And we're going to do a whole bunch of these all over the cake, filling in all the little spaces and breaking up the color as we go. And then we're going to switch to some dark purple, and this one is an Atco number 16 piping tip, which is also a star shape, but it's a little bit smaller. We're going to use this to make some cute little rosettes, and I'm also going to do some simple tiny little dabs so that way we can see that star shape. So my original plan was to fill in the rest of that space with my bright pink and my bright purple, but the more I filled it in, the more I felt like it was a little bit too much. So I grabbed my light pink once again and that little tiny star tip and used that to fill in the rest. And I think that looks so much better. It broke up all that dark color so nicely. I just love how it turned out, and I really hope you all do too, because that is it for today's video, guys. If you enjoyed the tutorial, you know what to do. Leave me a big thumbs up and lots of love in that comment section too. And if you did enjoy the video and would love to see more, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell, because I have lots more awesome cakes in store. Thanks for watching, guys. See you on the next one.